started. Okay, Rabbi say we're on Daf Yud Amud Aleph at the fifth line. The Omar Rava. Rava before had been discussing the concept of Palginan Dibura, that you can sometimes take only a portion of a person's testimony when the other portion of that testimony is inadmissible because of his connection to that portion of the case. But Rava further said, Ploni bo al nara ha-me'orasa v'huzmu neheragin ve'in mishalmin, but mamon bit ve'in mishalmin mamon, period. But bito shel ploni v'huzmu neheragin u'mishalmin mamon, because mamon lazeh u'nefashos lazeh. So Rava now creates a contrast in two different cases. If Edim Zomimin come and testify that a man had an adulterous relationship with a betrothed girl, and then the Edim are proven to be liars, so the Torah says, Va'asisam lo kasher zomam la'asos la'achiv. Whatever they try to impose upon the accused is what is done to them. They try to put an innocent man to death, and so therefore they are put to death. Normally, however, when you give someone the death penalty, he is exempt from any other penalties. So even though they caused they attempted to cause financial damage, they would be exempt from having to pay for that because they're paying the ultimate price of their lives. But that's only if the party that they try to harm doubly was the same party. What if they tried to harm party A with death and party B with a loss of money? In that situation, that you would assess them twice because they attempted to cause death to A and caused financial damage to B. In this situation, however, there is no second party because since they didn't identify the name of the girl that they tried to accuse of committing adultery, the only guilty party that they've implicated is the man, and therefore they get put to death. And there's no payments, there's no one to pay. We don't know who the girl was. But by contrast, in a situation where they do identify the name of the girl, now she's not going to get put to death because she's a minor. But what did they try to cause to get her done? Or even in the event that she's a Nara, which she's 12 years old and she is subject to the death penalty, you still have to pay monetary damages. But the monetary damages would be paid to her father, not to her directly. So even though the Edim Zomimin have attempted to put her to death, they still, since the father is a separate party, they are liable to pay both with their lives for attempting to have put to death both the accused adulterer and adulteress. Plus they have to pay the money that the father was entitled to of collecting the ksuva money for his daughter. And since they tried to cause that financial loss to a third party, they have to pay for that as well. Now, in a very similar case, Rava says almost the same thing. Va'omar Rava, Ploni Rava hashor v'huzmu neheragin ve'in mishalmin mamon. But shoro shel Ploni v'huzmu neheragin u'mishalmin mamon, because mamon lazeh u'nefashos lazeh. In a similar case, Rava says, we witnesses hereby testify that we saw so-and-so, a specific man, committing a bestial act. So they don't identify the animal, they only identify the human. In that situation, they are put to death, and that's it, because there is no financial attempt here, because they haven't identified the animal. Now, but if they do identify the animal, what are they attempting to do? They're attempting to cause financial loss, because the penalty when you identify the ox who's committed the act of bestiality is you have to kill the ox. So therefore, since they attempted to put the human to death by execution, and they attempted to cause financial loss to the owner of the ox, two separate parties, and therefore you have to pay the owner of the ox, plus they're also put to death. So the Gemara says, Hasu lamali hainu hach. The Gemara says, Rava basically is saying the same halacha in two different cases. Why is that necessary? Mishum dekaboyi baya iluya. And the answer is because in this latter case, Rava added a question to the case to complicate it further. Deboy Rava, Ploni Rava Shori Mahu. Because Rava asked, based on that first issue of the shore committing bestiality, what would happen if the man who's the owner of the shore is one of the Edim Zomimin, and he testifies that Ploni had a relationship with my ox. what would be the halacha? Mi amrinan adam karov eitzel atzmo ve'ein adam karov eitzel mamono. Would we say that a person cannot testify about himself or his relatives, but he could testify about his possessions, and therefore the implication is that once he's proven to be a liar, he is therefore testifying legally about his own possession, and he's an eid zomim, therefore, not only for putting the guy to death, but also for a monetary case. O dilma amrina an adam karov eitzel mamona. Or would we perhaps argue that a person is considered to be a party to the case when it comes to his own possessions? If, therefore, he's telling the truth, then we could not believe him vis-a-vis his animal, but we would believe him vis-a-vis the accused. In other words, is this an example of palgino dibura where we extract only a portion of his testimony, or is his entire testimony admissible? So, Baster Daba Yehader, Pashta Adam Karavetzel Atzmo Ve'en Adam Karavetzel Mamon. After Rava asked this question on case 2, he was able to answer it simply by saying that even though a person is a party of interest when it comes to issues dealing with himself, his own person, but he's not a party of interest dealing with his own money, his monetary possessions. And therefore, his testimony is admissible regarding his own monetary possession, his ox. And therefore, if he's not an eid zomim, for example, and he's one of the edim that testify that my ox committed an act of bestiality based on his own testimony, we could put the animal to death.
Why would he do that? He's killed his own animal.
Maybe just because he seeks justice.
Is he able to get compensation for the animal that just got killed from the guy who did it? Can he sue him?
That's a very good question. Can you sue the party that committed the act of bestiality?
Because you just lost your animal because you testified against your own animal.
Dead, the guy. You killed
It's a state, whatever. Think about why else would he do it? It just makes no sense.
It's a good question.
Why? What's his motive? His motive is he wants justice. He feels that my animal was violated. I don't want to keep an animal that was violated.
It's against the Torah.
Yeah.
How about
yes?
If he has the person put to death, if they has the inheritors, would they be able to be sued? Maybe.
That's what I said, maybe.
So I don't know whether there's such a halacha that there's legal recourse against the person who committed bestiality. I don't remember the halacha, but the Gemara doesn't seem to discuss that over here. Let us go on. Well, it's hezek sheinu nikr though. Hezek sheinu nikr you can't be assessed for. If I commit avodah-zarah with your animal, the animal has to be put to death, but I'm not liable for nezek. Hezek sheinu nikr. There's no physical sign of damage. Makos b'shlosha. The Mishnah had said that when you administer malchus, there was a machlokus between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yishmael as to whether you need 3 judges to preside over a case where the penalty is malchus. Let's say a guy is accused of eating bacon, right? So the penalty for eating bacon is malchus, 39 lashes. So I don't know if it's worth it or not. I don't know, you got to think about it. So anyway, so do you need 3 judges to preside over that case, or do you need 23 judges? So the Chachamim say you need 3 judges. Minahani Mili. Where do we know this from? Amar Rafuna, Amar Kra, Ushfatum Shnayim vein based in Shakol, Nosifan Aleim Od Echad Arekan Shlosha. The pasuk in the Torah that deals with lashes uses the verb of Ushfatum. They shall judge. They implies plurality, which is 2. You can't have an even number on a beit-din, so you add 1, and that's where we get 3. So Elameata, V'hitzdiku Shnayim, V'hirshiu Shnayim Arekan Shiva. The Gemara says, but wait a minute, there are 2 other verbs that are in that very same pasuk. It says, they shall judge, they shall exonerate, and they shall incriminate. So there's 3 theys, which they means 2. So that implies 6. Maybe you need 7 judges on a beit-din for malchus. So hahumi boy lekidula. So the Gemara says, those 2 verbs cannot be used to teach me the number of judges because I use it for a different drasha. As Ula taught, Amar Ula remez le'idim zomamin min haTorah minayin. He asked a bizarre question. He says, where is there an allusion to the law of edim zomamin in the Torah? So the Gemara immediately jumps on that. Remez le'idim zomamin vaksiv kasher zomam. What do you mean an allusion to it? It's an explicit law in the Torah. It says, you shall do to the witness that which the false witness, that which he attempted to do to his fellow. It's not you don't need an illusion for it. So, elaremez v'edim zomim in shalokin minayin. The question really is, how do you know that the default position on an eid zomim where he cannot get the exact penalty of that which he tried to do to his fellow is malchus? Now, this is the first Mishnah in Maseches Makos. If anyone has learned Makos before, the Mishnah talks about a case where two witnesses falsely testify that a Kohen is not really a Kohen. He's a Ben Grusha or Ben Chalutza. He's the son of a divorcee. And so you would think that even if these witnesses are Kohanim, they are immediately transformed into no longer kosher Kohanim. That doesn't happen. Instead, what is the fallback? When you can't fulfill doing to them as they sought to do to the other, you give them lashes instead. Where do we know this from? It is based on this pasuk. So mishum ditzdiku es hatzadik v'hirshiu es harasha v'hayam binakos harasha, question mark. So the Gemara says it's based on these two verbs. The pasuk right before Malka says, they shall exonerate the innocent and incriminate the guilty, and then the guilty party shall get malchus. So I don't understand, says the Gemara. Under what circumstances do you need to exonerate an innocent party in order to administer lashes? All you need to do is incriminate the guy who ate bacon. There is no innocent party in the case of a guy who eats bacon, right? So why does the Torah have to create a dichotomy of exoneration versus incrimination? There is no exoneration. You only have exoneration and incrimination when you have two parties, one is innocent, one is guilty. That's not normally the case in the situation of malchus. So what are these verbs for? They must be teaching me a side issue, which is Ela edim shihirshiu et satzadik va'asi edi achrini v'hitzdiku et satzadik demiikara v'shavinu lahanach rishayim. Then v'haya im bin hakos harasha. So the answer is that these two verbs are not addressing a straight case of malchus. They're addressing a special case where two witnesses who are liars come along and attempt to incriminate an innocent man, a righteous man. Second set of witnesses come and incriminate the first witnesses, and they exonerate the righteous. And that's what the pasuk is talking about. The second witnesses exonerate the innocent and incriminate the wicked. In that situation, the law is that you get malchus. That's the law that the Torah is teaching me over here. So the Gemara, and therefore, once I use these two verbs to tell me that the fallback position on edim zomim is malchus, I can't use it to tell me the number of judges, and therefore we go back to 3. So the Gemara's question is v'tepuk le milo sa'anim. Well, wait a minute, says the Gemara. Why do we need the two verbs in this pasuk to teach me that halacha? Let's just say that there's a mitzvah lo saseh, not to bear false witness. And we know that the standard penalty for a violation of mitzvah lo saseh is malchus. So that in itself should teach me that the fallback on an eid zomim is malchus. The Gemara answers, Mishum dahava le'lav she'in bo ma'isa, v'cholav she'in bo ma'isa, ein lo kin alav. The answer is derived elsewhere in the Gemara, that any mitzvah lo saseh, which does not involve a physical action, but is rather merely verbal in nature, does not incur a lashes penalty. So therefore, for example, if a person speaks lashon hara, it's a mitzvah lo saseh, right? But you don't get lashes for it. If a person bears false witness, if I only had the pasuk of thou shalt not bear false witness, that would not be enough to give him lashes. You need a special teaching in the Torah, which is v'hitzdiku v'hirshiu, to tell me that even though there's been no physical act other than verbal, he still gets lashes. Mr. Woody, what did you want to say?
What would happen if a eid zomim came to... What would happen if somebody testified falsely for the benefit of somebody?
Well, let's focus on that, the what ifs, when we get to Maseches Makos, okay? Because right now that's really just the side issue. But we'll talk about that I guess a couple of months when we get to Makos, okay? So now let's go on. Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amru be'esr mushlosha. Rabbi Shmuel says that you need a beit-din of 23. So my time at the Rabbi Shmuel. Why does he hold you need 23? So Amar Rabbi Asir Rasha Michayve Misos. Ksiv Hacha v'Haya Im Bin Hakos HaRasha V'Ksiv Hasam Asher Hu Rasha Lamus Malahalan be'esr mushlosha Afkan be'esr mushlosha. Abaye says it's Gzeira Shava. The Torah uses the word Rasha regarding the death penalty. It uses the word Rasha, evil one, regarding Malchus. So whatever applies to the death penalty applies to Malchus. Just like a death penalty case requires 23 judges, so to a Malchus case. Rava Amar Malchus b'Maka Misa Omedis. Rava says it's not based on a Gzeira Shava, but rather it's based on the fact that Malchus is a form of death penalty. In other words, when judges administer Malchus, essentially what they're doing is whipping a person in lieu of completely killing him. But it's a form of death. It's a partial administration of death and of execution. And therefore, that's why it needs 23, because it's just like any other death penalty case that requires 23 judges. Amar Ravacha berei derav leRavashi iachi umdana lamali limchaye v'imoyes lemos. Well, then why do we know from elsewhere that the judges have an obligation to make a medical assessment of the criminal before they administer lashes? That if he's not able to physically endure 39 full lashes because they feel that he will die, if they give him the full 39, they give him less than 39. Why should that be? If Malchus is a form of death penalty, give him the full 39, and if he dies, he dies. Because after all, it's subsumed under death. So the Gemara answers, Amar lei, Amar krov v'nikla achicha le'einecha, ki machis agaba dechaye machis. So the Gemara answers because it's based on the pasuk itself. The Torah says that your brother should not be humiliated before your eyes, which means that at the conclusion of the Malchus, he still has to be your brother. Now, how can someone be your brother if he's dead? If he's dead, he's not within your community anymore. He's not your colleague anymore. He's toit. And therefore, we learn from here that at the conclusion of Malchus, a person still has to be alive. So the Gemara's then question is, Eloha detanya amduhu lekabel esrim ve'ein makinoso elamakos haru'uyos lihishtalish v'kamehein tuman esrei. Well, then my next question is, what about the brisa that states as follows? There's a very interesting halacha that says that the amount of lashes that you administer always has to be a number that's divisible by 3. 39 is divisible by 3. But let's say the beit-din makes an assessment that he's not able to endure the full 39. Let's say he can only endure 20. If you give him 21, we think he's going to die. So you don't give him 20, you give him a number that's divisible by 3, 18. Now, why is that? The reason is because each lashing is a set of 3. You have to give him 2 on the back and 1 on the belly. And we'll learn more about that. The protocol of lashes, it will be discussed more extensively later on in Makos. But the point is that the question that I have, says the Gemara, Limchaye esrim v'chada v'chimayis b'hachada leimus tahaki machis agaba dechaya kamachis. The Gemara says, but I don't understand. You're telling me that when you administer lashes, it has to be administered to a living person. So give the guy 21. Fine, he'll die after the lashes are over. But all 21 lashes will be administered to a living person. So you fulfill the obligation of an ikla chicha leinecha, that your brother should not be humiliated as a result of the lashes. Fine, he's your brother during every single administration of the lashes. He's still alive, so fine, he'll die. Right? If Malchus is truly part of the death penalty. So Amar lei, Amar krov v'nikla achicha leinecha achar shalaka achicha b'ina v'leka. My answer is because the ordering of the pasuk is that after the v'nikla, after he's humiliated through the lashes, he still has to be achicha, which means at the conclusion of all of the lashes, he still has to be your living brother. If he's not your living brother at that point, so then you've gone too far. And that's why the 21st lash cannot be administered. Okay? Fine. Iber achodesh b'shlosha. Now let's look at the next machlokus in our Mishnah. The Chachamim had said that when you want to either make a leap month, which means make this past month 30 days instead of 29 days, or if you want to make a leap year by adding an Adar Sheni, that requires a 3-man beit-din. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel disagrees, and he says it starts with 3 judges. The deliberation process requires an extra 2 for a total of 5. And the finalization of the psak has to be done with a beit-din of 7. So we'll get to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel later, but let's first talk about this idea of Iber Chodesh of making a leap month. Now, let me just clarify. The way the beit din would do it is that, let's say, right now we're in the month of Tammuz, or we're in the month of Av, sorry. We're in the middle of the month of Av now. After day 29, we've gone through a full day of the month of Av. If witnesses see the moon tonight, let's say today's the 29th of Av, if they see the moon tonight, they're going to come and testify to us on day 30. If we choose to accept their testimony, then we will immediately say, Mekudash, Mekudash. Today is not the 30th of Av, but rather today is the 1st of Elul. Okay? So day 30 is either day 30 or it's day 1 of the new month. What we call that is the Yom HaIber. We call that the day of the potential for making it a 30-day month or making it the first day of the new month. So just make sure you got that terminology. So the Gemara makes an inference from the language of the Mishnah. It says, Iber HaChodesh Bishlosha. When you want to elongate the month to 30 days, it requires a beit din of 3. So Chishuv lo katani and Kiddush lo katani ela Ibor. So the Gemara says it's strange that that's the verb that's used to describe the process of what the beit din is doing. It doesn't say that the beit din calculates, and it doesn't say that the beit din sanctifies, but rather it says that the beit din elongates. Now the problem that the Gemara is going to have is like this. Calculation is something that the beit din should do at the beginning of the new year. They should basically say, listen, we know that over the course of the year, as the Gemara is going to tell us later on, you must have no less than 4 months out of 12 that are 30-day months and not 29-day months. And the reason for that is because if you have a full year that's only 29 days, by the end of the year, the moon phases will be totally out of whack with Rosh Chodesh. So you have to always make sure that you insert 30-day months regardless of the testimony of the witnesses. And we're going to talk more about that process later. That's what's called chishuv, where they sit down and they calculate how many of the following 12 months do we think we're going to need to make into 30-day months, and let's deliberate over that. That's one thing, but that's not what the Mishnah says. Another thing is Kiddush HaChodesh, which is the beit din says Mekudash, Mekudash, on the Iber Yom, on the Yom HaIber. And our Mishnah doesn't say that that requires a beit din either. But it says that when the beit din chooses to make the month of Av 30 days, so that on the Yom HaIber it's not Rosh Chodesh, and then only the day after is Rosh Chodesh, that requires a beit din of 3. I don't understand why that should require a beit din at all. Lo likadsha umemela liaber. I don't understand. Why does the beit din have to do anything proactive? Let them just be completely passive. If they didn't say Mekudash, Mekudash on the Yom HaIber, then by default tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, because you can never have a month more than 30 days. So by default tomorrow will be Rosh Chodesh. So Amar Abaya Tani Kiddush HaChodesh. So Abaya said, good point. You know what? You got to change the girsa of the Mishnah. The correct girsa of the Mishnah is not Iber HaChodesh, but Kiddush HaChodesh. That they sanctify the new moon by declaring on day 30 that today is Rosh Chodesh Elul and not the 30th day of Av. Tanya Nami Hachi, Kiddush HaChodesh ve'Iber Hashana Bishlosha Divrei Reb Meir. And we have a brisa that actually supports Abaya's change in the girsa, because it says that if they want to do Kiddush HaChodesh, or to add an extra month to make it a leap year, that requires 3 judges. Amar Rava v'ha'iber katani. Rava says, I'm so dissatisfied with that solution. Our Mishnah doesn't use the verb kiddush. It uses the verb iber. And like Rashi speaks out, it's one thing to say that a word is missing from the Mishnah, you can shnup in a word. But to actually change a word from one verb to another, it's a little bit contrived, just to willy-nilly make the change. So Ela Amar Rava kiddush biyom iber bishlosha. Iber leka kiddush. So Rava says really the way you have to read the word ibur is not as a verb, but rather as a noun. That when the beit din wants to sanctify the new month on the Yom HaIbur, on the day that would normally, on the day 30, then they need a tribunal. They need to say Mekudash, Mekudash in front of the 3 judges have to say that. But if they want this year month of Av to be 30 days, then they need do nothing, and then just de facto the following day will be Rosh Chodesh Elul. Umani, Rabbi Lazar Bareb Tzadoki, and this goes like Rabbi Lazar Bareb Tzadok. This is the standard shita that Maseches Rosh Hashanah works with. Ditnan Rebbe Elazar Reb Tzadok Omer, Imlo Nira Bizmano, Ein Mekachin Oso Shefar Kitshu Bashamayim. That if the witnesses do not come, or for whatever other reason the beit-din does not declare Mekudesh on day 30, then nothing else need be done, because de facto it is the new month, which will be tomorrow, is sanctified by heaven by itself. There's nothing for the beit-din to do. Rav Nachman Omar, Kiddush Achar Ibur Bishlosha, Biyom Ibur Leka Kiddush. Rav Nachman says, no. Our Mishnah is stating the exact opposite of what you said, Rabbi. Our Mishnah goes according to a Tana whose name is Plimo, who has an unusual shita. And his shita is that when beit-din does nothing, right, then de facto a standard month is always 29 days. So if a beit-din takes no action whatsoever, then Rosh Chodesh Av will be on the Yom, Rosh Chodesh Elul will be on the Yom HaIber on day 30. It's only if the beit-din makes a decision that Av has to be 30 days, then on the following day they will say Mekudesh on day 31 to make Rosh Chodesh Elul on day 31, so that Av was 30 days. And that's a very unusual shita. It's counterintuitive, but that's Plimo shita that's discussed elsewhere. And Umani Plimo, Hidetanya Plimo Omer, Plimo says, Bismano, Ein Mekachin Oso, Shalo Bismano Mekachin Oso. He says that when you have a standard 29-day month, and therefore the 30th day is Rosh Chodesh Elul, so then beit-din doesn't need to do anything, because that's the fallback, that's the standard position. It's only if they want to make Av 30 days that they have to proactively declare day 31 as Rosh Chodesh Elul, and that indicates, that reflects that Av was 30 days. And that's what our Mishnah means. When it says Iber HaChodesh Bishlosh, it means that when beit-din wants to be proactive and declare last month 30 days, then they need a beit-din of 3. Rav Ashi Omar La'olam Chishuv Katani, Umay Iber Chishuv de Iber, Va'aydi de Kaboy Lamisne Iber Shana Tananami Iber Chodesh. So Rav Ashi has a third shita. He says our Mishnah really is talking about the calculation that the beit-din makes at the beginning of the year to determine how many of the months of the coming year are going to be 30-day months. And Umay Iber Chishuv de Iber. And what it means is that the beit-din will calculate how many Iber months there are going to be, how many 30-day months there are going to be in advance.
You say it's always
why?
4?
One second. Why does the language of Iber, why is that used? It's the beit-din's calculation of how many months will be Iber months must be calculated in beit-din. So that's why the word Iber is used, to be consistent with the word Iber Shana. What's your question?
You said it's 4?
A minimum of 4. A minimum. There must be a
max?
minimum.
6?
I think it's 6, but I'm not sure.
So between 4 and 6.
Okay, so the Gemara now says, fine, Chishuv Chodesh in, Kiddush Chodesh lo, Mani Rabbi Eliezer. So what that basically is suggesting, that according to our Mishnah, the beit-din never has to sanctify the new moon proactively. They only have to calculate in advance how many months of this year are going to have to be Iber months. But they don't have to, at the Rosh Chodesh, ever have to say Mekudesh in front of a tribunal. Why is that? Because that's Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Bein Bismano, Bein Shelo Bismano, Ein Mekachin Oso, Shenemar V'kidashta Meshanasa Chamishim Shana, Shanim Ata Mekadesh, V'ata Mekadesh Chadashim. Rabbi Eliezer's shita is that the only time that a beit-din has to proactively sanctify something is if they're sanctifying a year, by declaring it to be a leap year, right? And we know this from the pasuk that says they shall sanctify the Jubilee year. Only years need to be sanctified by a beit-din, but months do not have to be sanctified by a beit-din. Beit-din just has to make an announcement to let people know when Rosh Chodesh is, but they don't have to do a formal declaration in beit-din of Mekudesh, according to Rabbi Eliezer.
So how do the witnesses fit into this?
I guess according to Rabbi Eliezer, they'll hear testimony. But then they'll make an announcement. They don't have to actually formally declare it. Yes.
I thought that things that involve major national significance was done by the Sanhedrin, not which group of 3 are these? Who are these?
Major national issues that are of major significance other than the calendar. In other words, you have to look at the mission to see what of those major issues are. Execution of a public official, annexing portions of the land of Israel or portions of the city of Yerushalayim. Those require Sanhedrin. That doesn't mean every national issue requires the Sanhedrin.
And who are these three? It must be an appointed
As
three.
you'll see, you're going to see later on in the Gemara. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Bishlosha, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says they start with 3, they deliberate with 5, and they conclude judgment with 7. So Tanya Ketzad Omer Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Bishlosha Maschinu V'chamisha Nosin V'nostin V'gomrin B'shiva. He says, give us an illustration of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's, conception of how the beit-din will constitute itself. So Echad Omer Leishev U'Shnayim Omer Shelo Leishev Batel Yachid B'mi'uto. I believe this is all just an example. Doesn't dafka have to be this way, but it's giving us an illustration. Let's say 3 judges are appointed to deliberate over whether there should be a leap year or not. So 2 say it's not necessary, we don't need to make a leap year this year. And by the way, the Gemara will give us the criteria. Why you would think, why is it necessary sometimes to make a leap year? The agricultural mores have to work out. There's other calculations having to do with the constellations that have to work out. So you need a beit-din to know these halachos and to make a decision. If 2 say we don't need to make a leap year and 1 says we do, the majority rules and therefore game is over. But Shnaim Omer Leishev, Echad Omer Shelo Leishev, Mosifam Leim Od Shnaim V'nosin V'nosin Badavar. But if 2 out of the 3 say we do need to deliberate this, and 1 says it's not necessary, so then we actually now do have a deliberating beit-din. In order to deliberate, we need to bring on 2 other judges for a total of 5. Then, over the course of the deliberation, Shnaim Omrim Tzricha, Shlosha Omrim Einat Tzricha, if after the deliberation 2 out of the 5 say, listen, we really should make a leap year, but 3 say it's not necessary, so then, Batlu Shnaim B'miuta. Then the majority rules and the case is over and it's a regular year. But Shlosha Omrim Tzricha, Shnaim Omrim Einat Tzricha, Mosifam Leim Od Shnayim, Shein Minyan Pachos Mishiva. But in the event that the majority of the 5, 3 out of the 5 or more, says that you do need to make this into a leap year, so then before they will make the official pronouncement, they add 2 additional judges for a total of 7 who will make that pronouncement.
But if it's unanimous, I'm taking it at the 3 or the 5 level.
Correct.
You don't bring in the extra
Right.
guys.
No. You always bring in the extra guys.
Really? Even if it's 3-0?
Yeah.
Doesn't say that.
I know, but that's why I said I believe this is just an example.
Oh.
This is an example of what we're talking about. I could be misunderstanding it, but that's my understanding of the Gemara. Hani shlosha chamisha v'shiva keneged me, and you'll see why I believe this way based on this next piece of Gemara. It's not because of the hung court, so to speak, but rather it's based on psukim. Where do you get this 3, 5, and 7? Right? Where does this configuration come from? So pligi ba Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani v'chad di'imi imanu Reb Shimon ben Pazi v'amrla Reb Shimon ben Pazi v'chad di'imi imanu Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. It's two Eretz Yisrael rabbis, and it's a machlokus. Which one was the senior? Which one was the junior? The first version is that Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani was the senior and Reb Shimon ben Pazi was the junior. The second version is just the other way around. But in any event, they dispute as follows. Chad Omar Keneged Birkas Kohanim. One of the 2 says it's corresponding to the Birkas Kohanim. The Birkas Kohanim is a 3-line blessing. The first line has 3 words, Yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha. The second line has 5 words, Yo'er Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka. And the third line has 7 words, Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem elecha shalom. So corresponding to that, you need to have the judges determining the calendar to deliberate 3, 5, and 7. What's the connection? The Gemara doesn't tell us what the connection is. I'll allow you to use your imagination to try and connect the priestly blessing to the way that the judges deliberate over how the Jews should be governed by the calendar for the coming year. You think about it, come up with an answer, you can talk about it at the seam. Okay, the other opinion, however, says, V'chad Omar, Shlosha Keneged Shomrei Hasaf, Chamisha Meroi Pnei HaMelech, and Shiva Roi Pnei HaMelech. There are 3 psukim in Nach which discuss the ministers of the king, of the mortal king. One talks about the 3 ministers of the king. Another pasuk talks about the 5 ministers of the king, and the third pasuk talks about the 7 ministers of the king. So we see that there's a ministerial body of 3, a ministerial body of 5, a ministerial body of 7. They all serve the king. Here Hashem is our king. He's the one who needs us to dictate to him what he should do as far as the Jewish calendar, and therefore 3, 5, and 7. Now, Tani Rav Yosef, Hani Shlosha v'chamisha v'shiva, Keneged Shlosha Shomrei Hasaf, Chamisha Meroi Pnei HaMelech, Shiva Roi Pnei HaMelech. And Rav Yosef had a brisa that said that exact thing. So Amrle Abaye le Rav Yosef, Adna Idna, my time lo Parishlan Marhachi. So Abaye turns to Rav Yosef and says, Rebbe, you've been teaching us the halacha of 3, 5, and 7 for years, but this is the first time you told us the reason having to do with the Psukim and Nach. Why didn't you tell us until now? So Rav Yosef's answer was, because you didn't ask. So Amar Lahu, lo hava yadana ditzrichisu, mi boisu minoi milsa v'lo amri lahu. He says, I didn't know that you needed this information. Have you ever asked me a question and I withheld information from you? If you wanted to know the reason, you should have asked. And basically, he's placing the onus on the student. If there's something, if I tell you a law, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason for it, you have every right to say, please explain it to me. Why should it be? And if you don't ask me, why should I feel compulsion to tell you? And that's really it's a very interesting principle. Why this dafka appears over here is in itself requires a little bit more elaboration. We're just going to begin the next piece of Gemara, but I'm going to leave it for Shlomi to do the bulk of the page tomorrow. The next line is just the mnemonic siman to remember, and then the brisa. Tanu Rabbanan ein ma'abrinas ashana ela b'mizumanin la. So this goes to Bob's question. Who are these 3 judges? They have to be appointed by the Nasi, by the president of the Jewish people. He appoints them the day before they sit down for their initial deliberation. If 3 people decide on their own to decide, that's not a validly constituted beit din. Okay? So, Ma'aseh b'Rabban Gamliel shomer hashkimu li shiva la'aliyah, hishkimu matzah shmona. There was once a case where Rabbi Gamliel, who was the Nasi at the time, said, I would like to have 7 judges convene, because he held, like his son Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, that you need to have 7 judges, okay, to finish the deal. So he said, listen, there's a special place, a special attic, where the Sanhedrin meets in order to decide the new month and the new year, and whether we need to make an ibrior or not. So I would like you all to convene tomorrow for that purpose. So he appointed them. So when he got there the next day, so Hishkimu Matzah Shmona, he got there the next day and he found that there were 8 people convened. So Amar Mihu Sha'ala Shalo Birshus Yered. So Rabbi Gamliel said, excuse me, whoever is here without being duly designated, would you please kindly leave? You're not supposed to be here. So Amad Shmuel HaKatan va'Amar Anihu Sha'alisi Shalo Birshus V'lo la'aber Hashana Alisa Ela Lilmod Halacha L'Maisa Hutzrachti. So Shmuel HaKatan was known as Shmuel HaKatan because he always belittled himself. And this is one example. He said, I'm the odd man out. I'm the 8th guy. And I was not really designated. But I only came because I wanted to observe. I wanted to see what the Sanhedrin does. But if you want me to leave, I'll leave. So Rabbi Gamliel's response to him was, Amar lo shev b'ni shev, re'uyos kol hashanim kulam lihisaber el yadcha, ela amru chachamim, ein ma'abrinas hashana ela b'mizuman in law. He said, sit, my son, sit. You are such a great scholar that all the entire Jewish calendar is worthy of being determined by you. The only reason we wouldn't be allowed to use you is because you weren't pre-designated from the day before, but not because there's anything lacking in your scholarship or in your greatness. And that was really his way of saying that he had great respect for Shmuel HaKatan. And now the Gemara tells us something truly astounding. V'lo Shmuel HaKatan hava ela ina shachrina u'machmas kisufa hu da'avid. That really, Shmuel HaKatan was one of the designees from the day before. But he volunteered to recuse himself because he didn't want to embarrass the fellow who had come up without being designated.
It's probably why Rabbi Gamliel said what he said. He knew, he was like winking at him. He's like, you know, I called you yesterday.
I called you yesterday. I knew you were the guy.
But you're a nice guy.
And I give you respect because you basically took the bullet for somebody else. And you taught
You
me a
know it and
lesson.
I know it.
You taught me a lesson that I should not single out a person and embarrass them. So whoever's here, let them sit, and we'll just use the previously 7 designated judges, and whoever's the 8th guy, we won't count you as part of the beit-din. Now, you're going to see more of this kind of story where a person takes a bullet to avoid embarrassing somebody else. Wonderful, very important gemaras. You'll see that in Mirza Hashem tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Rabbi Shimon ben